hey, Ian, either you're hitting it or you're not, you know. But again, I like to ride it till it's dumped.
Casino trip, full of chips. Wanna flip, double it.
Welcome to the Full of Chips podcast, the only chips you'll never lose, where the stakes are high, the takes are bold, and the conversations are always full of chips. With your hosts, Chris the Dice Degen and Craig from Old Bay Craps, you're tuned in to Full of Chips, the podcast where we dive into our experiences gambling and stories straight from the casino floor. Whether you're a seasoned pro at the craps table or just curious what the buzz is about, you're in the right place. Each week, we break down the games, talk to the experts, and bring you tips that could tilt the odds in your favor. So grab your lucky charm, stack your chips, and let's roll into today's episode.
Welcome, everybody. It's Full of Chips podcast. Welcome back to part 2 of our interview with Double Deuce, Ian Olson. Welcome, Ian.
Thanks, guys. How y'all doing tonight?
We are
Well,
doing
we are
great.
good.
And no, we didn't coordinate and text each other that we were wearing the same outfits. This is just part 2.
No, it's just part 2 because Degen took production privileges and cut part 1 when he felt like it. So if anybody doesn't like where I cut it, you can write in the comments. I probably won't read them. I'll just screen them and look at them and be like, it's a stupid comment. Just like orange soda. But we'll go back to it and we'll have a great time. So part 2, if you guys haven't seen part 1, I'll put a card to it. No, I don't know. Somewhere. There's a card somewhere. It's up on your screen, up at the top.
Find
I
it.
don't know. My camera's, it's over there, over on that side, somewhere, over Craig's head. But part 1 was great. Talked to Ian a little bit about him, how he got into gambling, meeting John, Crouch for the Cure, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to get a little bit deeper now. We're going to talk about some philosophical type stuff for a little bit, and then we're going to get wild when we talk about sports because that might just be a part all of its own. Ian and I talking sports. That's
You have a lot of football
scary
heads right
proposition.
here. A lot of football heads
Yeah.
right here.
No kidding.
Literally. But Ian, so cut part 1 by saying we're going to talk about Coach Parker. So we're going to talk about Coach Parker. For those of you who don't know, the Dice coach, Bo Parker, he's on the Casino Tears podcast quite frequently as well. So if you haven't seen that, you can go check that out as well. But Ian has taken lessons from Coach Parker. Craig, have you taken any lessons from Coach Parker?
Just the ones that Crouch for the Cure.
Just the ones that Crouch for the Cure. I am in the same boat as Craig, kind of, with a little caveat in there. I haven't taken any like long sessions with him. However, I did take 15 minutes with Coach Parker at Crouch for the Cure, him and I on a table, and he was looking at my toss, and he gave me a set to throw inside numbers. And I was throwing, and I just couldn't stay off the 9 when he was showing me this set. Right? I'm like, oh, this is great. Throwing nines. So then when I was in the battle, I used that set and I hit 4 consecutive 9s, just pressing it every single time, not taking anything back to the rack, which helped me a lot. But Coach Parker's a wealth of knowledge. So Ian, tell us a little about Coach Parker, your lessons with him, and don't divulge any of the confidential information. I don't need
Sure.
any legal recourse here. But
No, I get you.
tell
I
us
get-
about Coach Parker, the lessons you've taken with him, and have you taken lessons with anybody else? I know in the first episode you were mentioning a few other names. Have you taken lessons with anybody else or just Coach Parker?
No, just Coach Parker so far. I mean, I'm sure at some point I will go do the Casino Tears thing. I'm just letting. There seems to be such a run on that. I mean, look, they're a year out right now, right? And so, for those of you who don't know, Bo Parker's his name. Probably the most giving man at Craps for the Cure. He really is. And how does he do that? He does that by giving his time for people to purchase and donate money, and he gives his personal time to be able to do it at his craps lair, right? At his house, which is in Vegas, right? So I got turned on to Coach when I became obsessed with content on YouTube. And for those of you who don't know, Coach is on there, but those videos are so old. I mean, it's funny because I mean, not to say Coach looks old now because he doesn't. He looks way better than I do, but you could tell him those were a while ago, right? And so, I started watching those, and then I started watching Howard, and I saw there's two different types of philosophies. They knew each other, but two different philosophies, right? Howard was about the toss. Coach was about the full craps experience, right? Golden Touch was about, Dom. It's all about Dom, right? I watched the video. That's one of the reasons why I started in craps is I watched that, History Channel video of him and how he started out, which, was a great piece. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed watching that, you know. But then you hear of other people and having certain abilities and you think, is this something that can be doable, right? Is this something that I can do with practice? And I went to Ed Robinson and I asked Ed, I videotaped in a session and sent it to Ed, and Ed reviewed it, told me some stuff I should do. And I asked him, I said, and Ed, I'm sorry if you're out there. I don't mean to call out your other friends that were on there at the time, Howard, Heavy, you know, everybody. But he just thought Bo would be somebody that I could relate to, my style, and I never met Ed. This was strictly me reaching out to him, going back and forth and just kind of watching my videos in my garage with my old table and what he thought I should do. And I just said, okay, if I ever get a chance to go to Vegas, and I watched all of Bo's videos. Bo does, I mean, they're older videos, but they're classics because if you look at them, he does some basic betting stuff, right? Which
Yep.
as a new craps player, you should be watching. Don't go follow somebody on Jeremy that a guy that's been playing craps for 25 years, comes up with a strategy that you can't keep up with. It's the
Yep.
basic stuff of knowing that, hey, here's the iron cross, or here's a simple 6-8 bet that take one hit on the 6 and 8, drop it down to $18 a piece, do what you want from there, right? Something easy to consume as a newbie playing craps, right? Well, then the first time we went over and met with him, we met with Tony Leo too, and I really hit it off with Tony. Tony's real. I mean, I watched some of his videos, and kind of resonated with him. Jen, I think Jen and John, me. I think in one weekend we went to both houses. I think we went to Tony's and then we went to Bo's. But Bo just for me, something clicked, right? The first time we met with him when he came out to the Craps for the Cure I think it was year 3 was the first year we had him, or maybe year 2, I can't remember. But he brought his wife, and my wife was there, and we sat and we talked, and he was just, I looked at him almost like a movie star versus just a guy wants to give knowledge out. He truly wants to get out the knowledge that's in his head to people like you, Chris, and Craig, and me, because, not to sound morbid or anything, but I think he sees it as, he's got to get that information out to keep the game going, keep the game alive. And I think that's truly what he wants. Because if you hear a coach talk about, just energy and somebody that's very positive when I'm at the table, even when I'm getting my ass kicked, I'm still pretty positive guy. I might turn around and scream and yell and walk away, right? I mean, Craig can attest to this because Craig's always my wingman. He's either on my right or my left when we're in Vegas. And I'll walk away and, Craig's, hey, that bet just hit. What do you want to do? Type routine. But Bo teaches you not only mechanics, but he teaches you a philosophy. And that's what I needed, right? I didn't need the mechanics of Golden Touch at that time. I didn't need 75 different types of throws from Howard. I bought heavy stuff online, and I have it in a 3-ring binder that I follow along quite regularly. I bought craps books. Bo told me to buy Sharpshooter's book. I went out and bought Sharpshooter's book, right? Other people like Garrison said, hey, go buy John Patrick stuff. I went and bought John Patrick stuff. So I was and am a consumer of knowledge of the game just as much as I practice downstairs throwing dice, right? And so, but Bo, for those of you that are looking for a coach to keep it really real, and he'll do it, it could be the three of us. Next year,
Yep.
I could call Bo and say the three of us we're flying in Thursday night. We want to play golf Friday morning, and then we're going to come to your house for a session. Not only does he have drinks for you, but his wife asks you if you want anything. I mean, I brought a friend of mine 2 years ago to his house, and his wife was trying to give us soup, and she was getting ready for a Super Bowl party for her grandkids and stuff like that. And I connected with him on a different level, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like I am with John. John and I are, friends in so many different ways. But Bo, I just felt like he was giving me the things that I needed at the time and still do. That's why I go to him for tune-ups. Now, would I like to go to heavies? Yeah, I'd love to hear a different philosophy. I love how 10 Ton said he told Ed he wanted to go to Golden Touch just to say he went to Golden Touch. Like Holly here in town, she swears by Golden Touch, and she just has that sweet toss. Because if you get some, like Carrie has one of the sweetest toss you'll see around, and they're all because they're GC trained, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not
You
saying that.
spot them like you
Oh, yeah.
spot them in the casino. It was funny. We talk about it all the time. Like they just, not to say they stick out like a sore thumb, but like when you see that toss, you know it's a GCT toss. Like you know it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's great because couple of things with that. First of all, for everyone at home who wants to watch the Dice Coach videos, I'll link them down below if you want to go take a look. Funny enough, my rack management system that I use that I adopted from Clay is the Dice Coach's way of rack management. People think like it was just come up with out of thin air. No, that's Bo Parker's way of managing a rack. That's how I track hits. That's how I do everything. It's his way of doing it. And two other things, because you said so many great things. I just got to touch on all of them. One, not to make this sound like strange or anything, and I'm not calling Dice Coach and his wife old. All right, get that out of your head right now. But the Dice Coach and his wife, after meeting them at Crash for the Cure, they reminded me so much of like my grandparents, which like coming from me is a very high compliment because my grandparents are like two of the most special people in my life, where it's that exact thing that you said though, right? Like you can connect with him so easily, and his wife is such a sweetheart and like wants to offer you things and other things. Like it reminded me so much of like going to my grandparents' house, and like me and my grandpa were talking about sports bets and doing other things. My grandma, here you go, this, and like it wasn't just because I was her grandkid. Like I would bring friends over, she'd do the same exact thing, or like strangers would come over and they do the same exact thing. So like very very special people. Another special person, Ed, because it's unique that he told you to go to Dice Coach, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Ed knew what you needed and what would help you most, because he could have told you to go to any one of those other people, but he recommended Dice Coach, right? It's like I relate things back to golf a lot, and I know Ian, you're a golfer. But like you have a swing coach, right? And certain swing coaches are working on certain things. So you have to find the swing coach that works for you and with you, right? I don't need to go to a swing coach and tell me how to change my swing and give me a whole new swing. I don't need that. My swing is pretty good, right? I might need somebody to tweak and refine aspects of my swing, but I don't need you to change my whole damn swing. So it was interesting that you said that, Ed pointed out, which coach you should go to. And Ed obviously has a vast knowledge of the game, the different coaches, all that kind of stuff. So it's really cool that, he analyzed what you needed and then gave you a recommendation based on that.
Yeah. I think just to know that, Ed didn't know me from a hole in the wall, right? But
Yep.
just watching my video and having me talk through my video that he watched and I uploaded it, and he, to be able to do that, knowing, and then just when I first met him, I knew right away that he was a guy that I wanted to go and see. One, he was in a town that I love to go to. You know, there's a lot of people talk about, I don't want to go to Vegas anymore, blah, blah, blah. You know, I go there because I know I can go play golf there. I know I can, you know, the casinos, you have to expect that they're going to get what they want, right? Right. You know, the days of freebie stuff are probably over for a while. But to have the ability to call him and say, hey, here's my bone tracker book 720. Take a look at it prior to me coming in so you know what's going on. To have him reach out to me and say, hey, how about, you know, 10 o'clock at my house? To open his house up, you know, the only thing I haven't done with him, which I really like to, is get him to go out with us, right? Get 3 or 4 of us and each give him $100 and say, come show us how to do it, Bo. Come out and
Right.
play with us. That's the main reason why I would want to do Casino Tears' event is one, is to have the camaraderie, because it seems to be something that's really cool, right? I mean,
Yeah, it does.
you know, I can see Alfredo doing that with his crew, right? The Texas, you know, crew as well, is I think they do that when they go over to Alfredo's house, right? Is to have that camaraderie to be able to say, okay, but there's so much knowledge that Bo has that the average person doesn't. And you guys, he's amazing when you're sitting there throwing the dice, and he'll tell me, Ian, I'm laying the 4 for $200 because he'll bet along with me as I'm betting. And within a roll or two, I hit a 7. It's like, how did you know that? He goes, just, I can tell. I was like, well, show me how you can tell so I know to pull my bets down.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
the first one was, I was never a believer of the 5-roll boxcars or snake eyes, turn your bets off. And he was like yelling at me, Ian, turn your bets off. I was like, why? What are the chances? Okay. Just like there are any other time, math guys that are out there. But he's right. Turn your bets off for one roll at least. You know, I start doing the 2-roll one. I don't care if I lose out on $30. If I have 96 out there, see what I mean? That I could have lost on if I didn't do it. So it's the knowledge that he wants to get out to people is what I gravitate to. One, he's very honest. He's very forthcoming. He's somebody that truly wants, you know, people that are excited about something that he's excited about. It's really cool. So if you get a chance, it's the best money I've spent on craps, you know, outside of maybe my table, you know what I mean? But I really didn't spend anything. I just upgraded the whole time on that one.
It's
But
amazing that you said, you know, how Bo turns it off after an aces or midnight, because how many times has a 7 come on that second roll? Like you
yeah,
think on the first roll, you're like, what's he talking about? It was a 4. You're like, that second roll oftentimes is a damn 7.
and
Yeah.
he's somebody that can read the vibe of a table, even when
Yeah.
we're practicing. There was one time Jen, me, and John were at his house, and he could tell vibe wise what, you know, John very analytical, Jen very, you know, Jen knows her stuff. I mean,
She's a student of the game. Yeah.
she's a very
Yeah.
that's an understatement, Craig. She's a master student of the game, right? She wants to know everything, and she's somebody that can consume knowledge about this game, probably like anybody else I've met on here, right? And so, but when we were there, he could tell the vibe between me throwing, John throwing. He knew that I felt a little undermanned per se. You know, I was the lesser of the 3, and kind of gravitated towards me to pull me into where John and Jen were, which I thought was really cool, right? I mean, to be able to pick up on that I was uncomfortable, but made me comfortable. You know, he's like, what do you want to drink, Ian? You like Jameson? I was like, well, scotch? Yeah, I'm in, right? Trying to calm me down, knowing that I was a little nervous about coming and see him. Now I feel like he's an older brother, and I'm going to, you know, hey, I'm going to get my fill up of Coach Parker. And
Yep.
guys, I don't want to sound like I'm just beating a dead horse about Coach Parker, but go take one lesson from Coach Parker, even if it's a 2-hour tune-up lesson or something, right? Go take something from him, because I guarantee you the return on investment that you get from him, if you're serious about craps, will definitely, it's money well spent. It's better than losing $500 at the table, right? And he's such a giver. I mean, that one year, everybody that donated $500 got a 4-hour lesson with him. You could bring up to 4 people, right? This year he jumped it up to 1,000, and we still got a bunch of people to do it.
Some people feel like family, and they're not your family, but we all know that, like, us three here, we feel like brothers. Ed, Jeff, Bo, they all feel like uncles.
Yeah.
Put Clay in there too. Like, I've called Jeff Uncle Jeff before, when I meet him or something, or Uncle Lou. They just feel like uncles. They feel like family, and they make you feel like family, and they're so willing to help you. With you and Bo and that Ed, you worked with Ed a little bit, and he told you to go to Bo. I have not had the privilege to meet with Bo, but I've had the privilege to not only meet Ed, but talk to him about my toss. And it's grown into, like, he calls me. Like, what? We all started off with, watching YouTube videos, and it just grows into this community where your contacts list is 50% craps community.
Yeah.
Literally. I mean, I say it all the time. Like, I talk to like people in the craft community more than I talk to like my friends, because you know I genuinely want to, though. Right? It's not like, oh, I feel like I have to text this person. No, it's like I want to text this person, and it's unique, right? Because like even people like Ed and like others, right? Like, you start out in this game, like, for lack of a better term, idolizing them, right? It's like, look at this person, right? Like, they really know what they're doing. They really know what's going on. And like, as you get more involved in the community and you learn more stuff, like, you realize that like they're just like anybody else, and like they're your friends, and you can talk to them and like this kind of stuff. And like Craig's right, your contact list is growing, and like, I need something, I'm calling them. I'm like, hey, like, I know you're busy, but when you get a chance, like, can you give me a ring back? I have a question for you, or I want to ask you this, or, I was thinking about this. Tell me if you think it's a good idea. Right. And it's like, they're like that older brother or that like figure you go to for advice.
You have those people that, if they know that you're serious about the game, they're willing to give
Yep.
you as much knowledge as you're willing to take in.
Exactly. Yep. That's what it is. And like, then you start making trips to go see people and like learn from them. And like, I'm not saying you have to take a class, but you go meet up with them, and like, you can gain so much just by listening to them, right? Like, for Coach Parker, right? He does an hour segment at least during Craps for the Cure. Like, if you really sit down and watch that segment back, like, there's so many nuggets of information you can glean from that, that like, even me as a relatively experienced craps player, I'm gathering information from that. Or I'm going and watching one of Ed's lives, right? And I'll watch it live and I'll be in chat doing something else, doing whatever, and like messing around. But then I go back and watch Ed's video again, and I'm really analyzing what he's doing. Right. Same thing. I always tell Jeff and G this when they're doing their stuff, right? I watch it live when I can, and I chime in and I do whatever, but I'm not really watching, right? I'm watching and I'm interacting and doing whatever. Then I go back the next day and I sit down and I analyze, what were they actually saying? And like, this is again where the phone comes in. We said it in part one, where the phone, the notepad, like, I have a running list of like a notes app, just like you do, Ian, right? Of stuff that like I've gathered from the craps community. And like, I'll go through that when I'm at the casino, or like, you have a bad session. I go up to my room and I'm like, all right, what went wrong? And what have I gleaned from the information I've watched on all this YouTube that I can maybe implement into my gameplay that'll help me improve for the next time?
Absolutely.
And I think the biggest thing is that we're not emphasizing enough out here is that these guys are reachable and touchable people, right? You don't have to, like, I thought at first Bo was going to be on a pedestal to me, and he's not. He's a guy that I could sit down, have a drink with, and talk anything about. Like,
Blows your mind, doesn't
I,
it?
yeah, I was
Yeah.
interested on how he sold his house and lived on a boat down in Puerto Vallarta. I was like, what? How did you get your wife to do that? Right. And I was like, but that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. And, I don't have, it's funny because this last year at Crafts for the Cure, I got the opportunity to bet against Ed. And I bet you Ed didn't even know who I was, but I knew who Ed was. And so it was a challenge, right? And then he bet $100 on some, what was it, Craig? I think he bet $100 on a 12, or maybe it was a 11 or something. I
It was
can't remember
probably
what
a
it was.
horn. Yeah, definitely a horn.
Yeah, it was a horn. It's something in the horn. And him and I were like neck and neck up until then. And then all of a sudden, Eddie just blows me out of the water. It's like, how did he know to do that, right? But, you know, I feel like these are the guys, as they get stronger in the community, like Mac. You go back and you watch Mac's old stuff, right? When Mac would tell everybody, I don't know what I'm doing, but play along, right?
Yeah.
Now Mac's good enough to where Mac says, now come on and listen. Or like Joe. Joe's a guy that throws dice every morning for the world to see. He does it live. He wants everybody to see what he does. And and you guys, when we play with him, he is the most serious craps player I have ever played with. And he's such a big dude. I put my bets out and I turn around and I walk back out of the way just because I don't want to be with, he's somebody that really has his own aura, you know what I mean, about his own stuff, right? That's what I love about him, right? Brian, very religious guy, I love that about him. But he's got his own lane and he stays in his lane. But if I go on a cruise, he's the first first guy that I'm calling to say, hey, dude, I give him crap because he still owes me a hat. So, Brian, if you're watching this, I'm still waiting for my Holy Roller hat that when I beat you a couple years ago in the head-to-head stuff, you said you were going to get me. So I'm just letting you know. But
Yeah, that's me too, because that was on my channel.
it was
I'm
on
still
your
waiting for
channel.
my hat too.
Exactly. You remember him saying, "Oh, I'll get you a hat." I gave him a hard time about that when we were and I hooked him up with a place to stay, and I thought for sure he would have brought me a hat, but he didn't even
Yeah.
bring me a hat.
Yeah.
Where's
So
the
Brian, if you're listening, you owe Ian and I a hat.
No kidding. Put it in the chat, Brian.
So, it's so great to hear those stories that you have about Bo and Coach Bo and just what he means to the game.
Yeah.
I feel like we have a select few who are just like, it's like going to a library and picking your book off the shelf of an encyclopedia. E is for Ed, J is for Jeff, B is for Bo. Like, and just you could read a mountain worth of knowledge and stories about the game because they've been playing it so long. They're serious about winning, and they're serious when they go to the casino. Um, all of them are great to say hi to and stuff, but they're serious about the game. And you reached out and you wanted to be better at the game. And what better way than to do it with a dice coach? One of the things I wanted to just transition to is, you talk a little bit about philosophy, and we mentioned John Patrick's book, Advanced Craps, or I think I have the book over there. I can't remember the name of the thing, but anyway, his philosophy is what I like to call Dr. BKMD. It's bankroll, knowledge, money management, and discipline. Which of these four do you find the hardest to learn?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is probably I would say bankroll management, just because I'm a all the way go and don't know when to switch. I'm still young enough in the knowledge part. I know the table's cold and I'm telling myself, go dark, and I'm not going dark. Why aren't I going dark? Right? I know that those three guys have already thrown once and PSO'd or maybe a two roller, and knowing, hey, try to keep the money going, right? And so I think for me is that it's just having that ability. I mean, best thing I ever got was John gave me his Lammers. And then Jen made me some really cool Seahawk Lammers. Craig, you saw these. I mean, for
Yeah.
those of you out there in the world that have a 3D printer, these are the coolest things in the entire world. And I love Jen for making me these. I wish I knew. Yes. They even say, whoops, let me see here. Double Deuce on
There
them
you
right
go.
there. And then in the back
Yeah.
side, the Seahawk logo. And they're
That's
great
sick.
to be able to understand how much money I have in my rack,
Yeah.
right? In the past, I just dump it all in, and John yelled at me. That's why John gave me my first set of lammers, and then everybody stole those lammers from me because we'd be yelling and, hey, can I get some of those? Yeah, John will give me more. And then Jen made me these. But that has been a game changer for me because I can look down and say, okay, I've played the skill 66 4 times and I've lost 4 times. I need to switch it up. I need to
Yep.
figure out something else. Let's go play the 4 and 10 for a while, or let's do something really crazy and, you know, lay the 4 or 10, you know what I mean? Or just because I get consumed by too much knowledge. And, John and I have talked about doing some other things that I don't want to talk about on here because sometimes when you talk about it, it goes away. Somebody else does it, right? So,
Like a World
but
Series chance.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But for me, it's about, my biggest thing is on the philosophy side of that, Craig, is don't get too consumed by too much knowledge because there's so much out there that pick one thing and learn that one thing. Like Coach Parker said, Ian, learn to bet. Throwing can be random, it can be influence, it can be whatever you want it to be. But if you don't know how to bet, you can't play this game. All right.
No,
And
I
so I
love it.
think,
I can attest that I've played next to you enough times that the way you use the lammers and the way you always get your buy-in back in order and you keep your profit elsewhere
yeah.
and you're always like if you use it, okay, now I got to fill it back in before I can put any money over here that's going to go back in the pocket. And I love that.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
everybody needs to learn that.
Yeah. 100%.
All right, so we've gone over a lot of craps related stuff, but we're gonna switch off the craps for a little bit. Um, Ian and I obviously met through craps, but sports, Ian, as you know, obviously we do a pick show, NFL based every year on the Casino Gaming TV channel. You got three sports nuts in front of you right now. Um, whether it be football, baseball, basketball, whatever it may be. Me, soccer. I know these guys could care less about soccer, but that's beside the point. Um,
That's not
so
even a real
what got
sport.
you into oh God, here we go. Um Ian, what got you into NFL? And I know you dabble a lot in gambling on the NFL and you go to Vegas for the Super Bowl every year. So what got you so into like the NFL over any other sport?
Well, it's it goes back to when I was a kid. My dad had a shirt that said it was a black T-shirt that had the iron-on letters on it, and I remember this is vividly. It said, "Don't fuck with me while I'm watching the Seahawks," and I thought that was, as a kid growing up, it was perfect. It was just a way that I connected with my brothers and my dad. Was through sports. Like baseball's, I mean, if you would have saw me and my brother recently as the Mariners were making a run to try to make it to the World Series, it was everything, right? Football for me is just something that I like it because it's not every day. I mean, my wife is a season ticket holder of the Kraken. We call her a crack whore. I own season tickets to the Seahawks. We go to a lot of Mariner games. It's just a way for my family and I to connect, right? And now my wife's family is now part of that as well, as that we connect. But football, there's just something about it. And I think it has to go back to when I was in college, really, is what I would get up and I would wear all Seahawk gear on Sundays, sitting in my dorm room watching TV on a little 13-inch TV because I was the only one that had a TV in my dorm room, trying to figure out, hey, how to watch football, right? And then this crazy new sport came out called fantasy football. And it changed everything about football for me. I became
Yep.
obsessed with fantasy football. And this is
Yeah, I
back
wanted to
before
ask you about that.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanted to because I know like we do a lot, like we do the pick shows, and obviously we're in fantasy leagues together. And like you and I could talk fantasy for hours. So we've gone over it on this show before about like how I bet on sports with like models and other stuff, right? And I didn't really mention it on there, but I also bet a lot on like the daily fantasy sports, but mainly football, because football is my wheelhouse on that kind of stuff. And I have models for that. And like you've seen my fantasy football spreadsheets and stuff. They're ridiculous by most people's standards, but that's beside the point. So when you're looking at like going into NFL picks or fantasy football, like what's your thought process on that kind of stuff? How do you dive into kind of formulating your team or formulating your picks?
Oh, great. Yeah. Problem here is in the state of Washington, we're not blessed like you guys are to be able to pull your phone up and make bets from there. We actually
It's
have
dangerous though.
Yeah, trust me. I'm so glad we don't have that, to be honest with you. Literally, we have to drive to a casino that has a network shell over the top of it that you have to be on the grounds in order to be able to use their app to make a bet, right? So that keeps
Which I
me.
hated, by the way, when I was in Seattle. I
it is
hated that.
It is rough. It is rough. It sucks sometimes. Like this morning, I was looking at a couple, 3-card parlay type stuff that I was going to drive up to, Snoqualmie and do it. But it does limit my ability. I've got an older brother that does very well with FanDuel. I mean, he's won tens of thousands of dollars on FanDuel by being able to. I'm kind of glad that I don't have that. But since we don't have that, my avenue is fantasy football. We started back in 1990, maybe 1989 in college of
Wow.
what that was. And I didn't have an idea that, I had to grab a newspaper and be able to pull all the stats out of a newspaper because we didn't have stuff online, and then we gravitated to basketball. And I remember, only the first game of the week that somebody played on, I would do the stats by hand. We'd go buy powdered raspberry donuts and a thing of orange juice, and me and my roommate would do that. It's just a way of getting that approach of how to be analytical without truly being analytical. And I think that's part of me. It's knowing that, I'm playing Chris. There's a competitive component between you and I. And I know if I don't start, I don't know, Dunze over CD, I might lose that week. And it's about, making the wrong kind of choices, right? Now, and then that's led into pick 'em, right? There was never a pick 'em. It was always, pick a team that you want to bet on. But now to be able to pick all the games in a week, it's a challenge because you're playing, Chris and I do a smaller league with Jen, and then we do an expensive league with Jen's friends. And
Yep.
it's funny on just, I would have never thought, and Jen, if you're out there, I don't mean to offend you, but I never thought Jen's friends, attorneys, would know how to do pick 'em. And they do.
All right. Well, to be clear, all right, and if Jen's friends are listening, she was shitting on you, telling us you don't know what you're doing. So Ian and I walk in there like, oh, this is going to be like taking candy from a baby over here. We're going to just waltz away with these picks. Just pay us the money now. And
Yeah.
then next thing I know, I'm sitting here and I'm like, I got 12 right, and I'm in 5th place for the week because somebody got 14 and 15 games. I'm like,
Yeah.
I thought these people didn't know what they were doing. Jen, what are you sandbagging me with over here?
It's crazy, Well, it's funny because I won money from Jen, and she told me last year at the Craps for the Cure, hey, I owe you money. I still haven't seen it. Jen, where's my money?
Yeah. Yeah, Jen, where's his money?
Can't afford it, Jen? Can't afford it? Uh-huh. Sure.
Yeah.
So, but to get back to it, I love fantasy football. I mean, I love the ability to see it instantly on an app now, right? It feeds
Yep.
that small gambling fix. Now, FanDuel or DraftKings, whatever you use out there, I think that would take it to another level with me, and it might make it too much addictive for me, right? I just think that for me and my addictive personality, coming from a kid that's both parents were addicts and alcoholics, is that I just really I cut that off. Now I'll go make bets. Like I just bet on the Seahawks a couple weeks ago. It was the
Or
Arizona
you call
game.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I do too. It's like, here, I'll Venmo you $100, make this bet, right? That's like
Yep.
classic, right? It's 100%. So, but, uh, I think for me and fantasy football has made, and it's the reason why NFL's the number one sport is because everybody from anybody has a fantasy team. It
Yeah.
could be fun, like you have at work, or it could be a serious one where you pay $250 for a season to be able to do, and it's just moderation on how people like to do that. I have a $50 league, a couple $100 leagues, and a $250 league. All you have to do is win one, and it covers the price for everything. That's the way I look at it.
Let me ask you a question, and this goes out to both of you because we love football. We've grown up with our own team that we root for, but and I can't even remember it for myself. Did fantasy football make us a bigger fan of watching any game at any time, no matter who's playing? Or did either of you have that in you prior to getting into fantasy football?
Well, for me, it was all about fantasy football. I could care less about Dallas playing Miami in Miami until, back in the day that you knew Marino was going to throw 5 touchdowns. Okay? Let's be honest. You know what I mean? So when you go back, that just makes it more enticing to watch. It's not that it's the only reason why I watch football. I do it because it's an add-on. And then you
Yeah.
throw that crazy thing called Red Zone out. Chris, you remember when Red Zone came out?
Oh yeah.
You never wanted to change the jam channel because they only showed you
The score,
stuff that mattered towards.
right?
So you
Your
want to know how
fantasy.
much of a degenerate I am when watching football? And I'll answer your question in a second, Craig. So I have an 80-inch TV behind that wall that I watch my sports on and stuff. But I split the screen. So I have Red Zone on half the screen and then whatever game I'm watching on the other half. But then if there's multiple games on, I have all the games on. Like I have 4 games going at once with
Yeah.
Red Zone in the one corner. Red Zone's always on in my house for that reason. And Craig, to answer your question, yes. It does come down to fantasy football and also betting on football, right? So, I mean, I'm betting like on NFL Sunday, I don't leave the couch most days, right? I'm sitting there watching. Fiance DJ knows the deal. Like she knows I'm not going to do anything. And she's usually watching with me because she's interested in it and stuff. She may be on TikTok or whatever, but like when the Eagles are playing, don't talk to either one of us because we're locked in watching the Eagles, right? But even when other games are on, she's watching with me and we're having a good time, making snacks, whatever. But betting on football and having fantasy football definitely makes those games like more enticing to watch.
Yeah.
Like Ian said, right? If the Dolphins are playing the Cowboys, I give less of a shit what happens in that game, other than I hope the Cowboys lose for the Eagles' sake, right? That's all I care about.
I'm with you.
But now that I have fantasy football and I'm betting on games, player props, all that kind of stuff, I care way more what's happening in that game now than I did. And for the folks at home, okay, I'm going to caveat this with don't bet on something just because you're watching it. All right. That's a bad way to gamble. So don't do that. But like, if I may have a player prop or I may have one of those teams in a bet or something, or I have them on my fantasy football team and like I want to see, player X do well. So yeah, I'm curious to see what's going on in that game. But if I didn't have those things, I really wouldn't care. I'll check the box score at the end of the game and see what happened.
Creating your own parlay has been one of the best things I've ever seen in sports betting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they always give you the shit
Yep.
parlays, and 1 out of the 4, like that's never going to happen. That hasn't even happened last season. Like, what do you think? You're just making shit up. But when you studied the game and even studied with even fantasy football, because you got to study to do that in order to make your picks in the draft, and then also how to assemble your team every week to beat Chris, right, Ian?
Yeah, for
That
sure.
that has brought you to sports betting, and the sports betting, to be able to pick your own parlay, you're doing it based off of everything you've been watching. Football for me, it's the number one sport.
Yeah.
Chris, you mentioned about
Me
having the
too.
multi-view. It's going to be
Mhm.
Red Zone, whatever's on Fox, whatever's on CBS, and hopefully golf is happening at the same time.
Yes,
That fills up the
exactly.
screen there.
Exactly. And like that's the thing, right? Like you mentioned so much analysis goes into this and um like to be a profitable sports bettor and even a profitable fantasy football player, right? Like Ian and I'll tell you, and Craig, you probably agree with this. Like if a league doesn't have a large buy-in fee, like to me, it's not worth my time spending a lot of time worrying about that league, right? Do
Right.
I care? Yes. Am I going to spend hours looking at matchups and looking at, my running backs going up against this team? What's this team's rush defense look like? What's the injury report look like for this team? Like, what who's on my bench that I could potentially put in front of that person. Like, I don't spend a ton of time doing that for leagues that I, again, don't care about. It's necessarily not the right phrasing of that, but I'm not as invested in. But in those $250 leagues or those, I've been in $500 leagues, I've been in $1,000 leagues,
Yeah.
right? Those leagues, I am locked in looking at matchups and looking at analysis and stuff. And more often than not, it works out for me. But I'm putting the time in order to make that, because again, to me, that's an investment, right? I invested money into this league. Now I have to invest time to win money back. But it's also very relatable to gambling in a casino and craps and all that kind of stuff, right? To bring the sports thing, because I know some people are into sports, to bring it all full circle, like if you really want to get good at a game, right? If you want to get good at craps, you want to get good at blackjack, baccarat, roulette, whatever it is, you can say they're all a game of luck, sure. But if you want to really get good at the game, you have to put time and effort into the game. Yes, you may get lucky every once in a while and just throw things around on the table or on the roulette wheel and get lucky and hit it. Sure. But if you really want to be good at like craps or you really want to be good, craps I think is the most relatable because like you can really dial in a toss, right? You can get really, really good at that. Your betting systems, your progressions, all that kind of stuff. You can really dive into those kind of things, right? Blackjack, you can get really good at like a basic strategy or whatever way you're playing, counting cards, things along those lines. Will it translate? Debatable, depending on how you play. But like a roulette game, you can learn a lot about it, right? You can get really into it, but like you can master a betting system. Baccarat, you can learn what those charts mean, right? You can get really analytical about those kind of things. So, moral of the story here is whatever you're into and you're passionate about and you really enjoy spending time doing, whether it's fantasy football, betting, craps, blackjack, baccarat, whatever it is, like you're going to get out of it the amount of time you put into it. Right. That was always something like my parents and like teachers said to me when I was in school, we're only going to get out what you put into it. And like, sure, I don't care about, taking this stupid class because I need my gen ed credit for, this stupid gen ed. Right. But I need the degree. So I'm going to put the time in so I get the credit for that class, so I get the degree, so I can get a job that I actually want to do.
So you talked about, you said you brought it full circle back to gambling and talked a little bit about you really want to learn the game, even dice sets or anything like that. So I wanted to bring it back to a previous question that we were waiting to ask Ian, which is, Ian, what is your favorite way to play craps? And what dice sets work for you now that you've had the benefit of meeting with a dice coach?
For me, Bo, after he watched me a couple times, he uses those blue ceramic dice that Ed has that nobody has anymore. I've scoured the internet trying to find somebody to make those for me. I can't find anybody to make them. I'm obsessed with. So I have wooden ones on my table, right? But Bo gave me 5 different sets, and I took pictures of each one of them, which I encourage everybody to do, right? To know what sets we can do. So we started with a 4-2-2-4 set. We've done a 5-6, 5-4 set. Which are 2 of my favorites. We do an inverted V, 3V set. It just depends on what table I'm at. And we play enough here in the Northwest that I know which ones. Ones that really screw me up is when I go to Vegas and I play on a table I haven't played that. I'll give a great example. As I was staying out at the Rio and hadn't played on that table in years. I don't even know if that's the same table it was when the Rio was a hot place to go to. But I started playing on there. I was like, man, this is totally different than what it is. And I didn't understand at first up until I met with Bo the difference between what is a bouncy table. Everybody talks about a bouncy table. Well, what do I do to combat a bouncy table? And Bo said, look, this is what you need to do, right? And this is how you need to do it. And this is how you change a set. The way Ed and Joe and, Alfredo can look at a set, and George, right? Obviously, the guy that every throw he throws, he can tell you before it lands, it seems like, what his dice were doing. And I thought that was the biggest increase for me. Like, I threw one roll in my house, 55 roller. And I was like, well, how did I do that? It's because I could tell myself, I used the same set, and I could say, okay, that dice is off. Right dice is off. I need to fix that on my toss and then go back into it, right? To be able to sit back. So the key is, I agree with you, Craig, find a set that use Bone Tracker. For me, it was Bone Tracker. Figure out a set that works best, or go to a coach and ask them, right, what's best. And then practice that set religiously. But you have to have some backups, right? Because when it's not working because you're on a wrong type of table, a great example was, Craig, you and I, we played Friday night at Planet Hollywood, and I hit the ATS, and everybody left right before I hit the ATS, right? And then the next night we went there, I used the same set on the same table, and nothing worked. But I was too stubborn to make a change, so I ended up losing $400-500, because I wouldn't make the change. Knowing when to make that change is what you need to practice on at home. And that's why, all of us have our own different types of tables. Craig, you don't have the same type of table Chris and I have, but you have a table that
right.
can do, and it's dual-sided. I think that's the smartest thing that people do, is Bo's trying to work with me on throwing from stick right one, and I couldn't hit anything. He's like, Ian, don't ever play from stick right one. I want you to go straight out to the top, and I want you to shoot from there. And I was like, Bo, I can't shoot from here. And then all of a sudden I reel off 15 roller, and he said, that's what I'm talking about. Don't go stick right one and do the ice tongue toss and throw it into the far corner. That's not you. So being able to understand what's me versus what's, watching you, Chris, throw is totally different. And Craig, when you were throwing it backhanded, I was so obsessed with trying that at my house. I was like, Craig's doing this and it's working. Shit, I got to figure out how to do it. And I was like, no, that's not me.
It
Or
worked for that day.
yeah, exactly. Well, there's a guy here in the Pacific Northwest that watched Howard's magic toss, where you play, the sevens and you throw it diagonally like this down from the center, right? Craig, I think it was you and I that were playing the first year at the new
The Casino Quest.
and I rolled a 27 roller doing that. I've never done that since.
Neither have I.
How often does that happen though? You see
I
some
know.
toss and you try it, and like the first time it's like, wow, this toss is amazing.
Yeah.
And then it's PSO City after that.
And that's
It's like,
why
if I want to play dark on myself, I'm going to do that toss because I know it's going to be sevens.
yeah. Well, and that's the key, is understanding when to make that switch. That's what, in watching videos and talking to Bo philosophy-wise of when to make the switches. I don't know. Like George can tell you, as soon as he throws that and he pulls his dice back and he says, right dice is off access, I need to switch to this, and he'll switch to that. I'm not a firm believer in keeping switching the dice, just because I make a wrong twist of my wrist or release wrong on my toss doesn't mean I'm going to do it again, right?
But you mentioned about having backup sets, right?
Yeah.
And Ed mentioned on I think the podcast last week that if you're, because this is even for people who may not want to invest into such a technical thing about their dice. Some people don't have the time, He said, if you're throwing dice and you know your set and your set's supposed to get inside numbers and you're seeing outside numbers or you're seeing horns with it, maybe use that set on the come out if that's what you're throwing that day. So it's not just about watching
Yeah.
what's happening at the table, but watching what's happening with your throw. And we all know that sessions can just be isolated sessions.
Yeah.
And that isolated session may mean, okay, this is supposed to be getting 6s and 8s. Clearly, it's not getting me 6s and 8s today. It's giving me horns. I'm going to bet the horn, or I'm going to do this set on the come out. But I've been practicing Bone Tracker enough that I have 3 backup sets to go to. And maybe, and they're all variations of what, like a 3V. They're all variations of an all 7 set. They're all variations
Yeah.
of a hardway set, So I know you get very technical with people who say quarter turn this way, quarter turn that way. You have to really study the game to know that. But for the more advantaged player, not casual player, if you know what your dice do because you've played long enough and you're experienced and you go with the same set in mind and something's happening different than what you expect, bet that way.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is that we don't see enough on people that do videos is what's the difference between the height of the toss, the 45-degree versus the 30-degree versus 2 inches from the back wall versus clear up into the DP line from the back line, right? Or throwing in the hook versus and knowing to where what sets will do that is amazing. I mean, there's so many different types of tosses. There's the Yuri toss, there's the chopper toss, there's, the par toss, there's whatever. Find something that you practice enough. If you want to get better at this game, there's legitimately people here in the Seattle area that will set dice and then turn around, pick them up, shake them, and throw them. It's like, why do you
Shake and
set the
bake.
dice? Yeah.
Yeah.
Why
Yep.
are you wasting your time?
I
Why
love
do you
it.
do that?
But I never say anything because it's not my place to say anything because, that's my job is to learn to bet when somebody does that, right? It's not my job to tell them, hey, why'd you just do that? And you're wasting time.
Yeah.
I love it. There's guys there that will set them a certain way and then they'll grab them and then it's just like a huck and chuck. And it's like, okay, but you have to be able to pick up on that to be able to understand. Now, I I'm not I mean, you guys have played with me. I'm not the best thrower in the world. I'm not, you know, Jeff showed up the last Crafts for a Cure, and what he rolled, Craig at 36 roller,
35,
and
yeah,
I think a
35 roller.
35 roller, and I think I only made $250. Why? Because I was too busy doing the community, talking with Joe and Brian and Leon and Craig. Then I was focusing on Mac throwing a heater. And
Yep.
people need to pick up on that better and understand. I've heard stories about that's how Clay does it. You start talking and all of a sudden Clay's 15 rolls deep into a roll. And if you're not paying attention, you're losing out on money. That's like what Coach said. Ian, if you're hitting nines, bet the nines. Don't worry about betting the 6 and 8s. Or, like he got mad at me because I said, okay, well, let's play this legit, right? Let's play this legit. So, Chris, I played you and Greg from 555, your modified Iron Cross, 30-30-10, right?
Yep.
And so explain to me, Ian, why you want to do that. Well, it's always looking, always trying different things. Well, then I do something. Why are you doing that? And to have somebody else explain it to you, especially if you're playing in your locals, ask people at the end of your roll, hey, what do you think I could have done better? That's how I use Jen.
Yeah.
Because Jen's written everything down. It said, Ian, you got a 4 roller. Okay. Well, what did I have? So the next time I know, switch that set, right? Switch that approach. Throw it higher arc, lower arc, hit closer to the back wall, farther away from the back wall. You've got to, that's how I learned what a bouncy table was, is watching Gargoyle and Mac talk about it on their channel, right? I was like, geez, now finally somebody's explaining it. You know, I mean, my table's got two different sides to it, right? So it's having that ability to be able to do that as well as I think is what the newer people that are coming into our community, and it is getting bigger. It is. I mean, I just see the tables, you know, the only thing that sucks is they can't get enough dealers, so everything's going electronic. Electronic in the state of Washington is like, it's crazy how it's taking over in a short amount of time at the casinos
Really?
around. Yeah, it's crazy. Started with one, and then we don't have any crapless tables, but we've got a shitload of, you know, roll to win or not roll to win, but stadium crap, not stadium craps, but bubble craps and stuff like that now, to where people are why that just takes the whole part of craps away from me, right? It's like I'd much rather
Yeah.
hang out with the three of us on one table. You know, that's the one thing that, if I could say to you guys is, if there's a private table, don't think you have to go to that all the time. I always think I have to go, and then I get mad because I don't do something right, or, you know, I, you know, Jen, she's like a sister to me. She really is, a younger sister. She yelling at me because she thought my hands were over the table because somebody on that end was throwing so close. And I took that as, hey, that's constructive criticism from her. It's not that she's
Yeah.
yelling at me to get your hands up. She's just telling me, hey, that could affect everybody else that's at this table, right? But one of the things I have to learn is like when to get off the table. Craig, I love playing with you because you stop when you know you want to stop. And that's a tough thing to do sometimes. Is you're here, you got 12 people that are your friends, you're just waiting for that one person to go on this heater. It doesn't always happen, right? Doesn't always
Yep.
happen.
We're gonna get
So
into that when we get into the top 5
I
about the
bet
private table.
Yeah. Ian's taking us right to the top 5.
But you are definitely hitting on maybe some pet peeves, Chris.
yeah.
Oh, yes, maybe some pet peeves. Um, Ian, do you have any pet peeves or superstitions when you play? We always like to ask our guests this question.
The best one is don't hate me because I'm loud, right? I get a lot of shit from people because I am boisterous, I'm short, I'm bald, I'm old, and I'm loud, right? Don't hate me. I love these guys down at the other end of the table that are bitching and moaning about what I'm doing for my part of the table. Hey, I'm doing it because I'm excited. I don't do it to annoy you. I don't do anything I do is for my benefit. It's not for your benefit. It's not for, you know, the table benefit. And sometimes I take some heat for that, right?
To all the viewers out there, you will never find a person better at chatting it up with dealers than Ian right here. He's
That's a
got
fact.
the best approach, and just starts from the moment he puts his card down with his cash to buy in. He's already chit chatting, not just with the dealers, but with the box person. It's amazing. You really are
Yep.
amazing. And, I credit you for bringing that energy to the table right off the bat, you know?
Yeah. And I think the best part of craps and why I do that, Craig, is because I want those guys to know that I'm here to have a good time. I'm not coming here with a $1,500 bankroll to make 10 grand. Like some people, that's what they want to do. No, I'm here. If I win a couple $100, best thing John ever taught me was, Ian, get to 20, 25% and walk away. Right. Still struggle
Yep.
with that sometimes. Still struggle. I mean, Craig pulled me off a table after I hit the ATS. He's like, time to go, Ian. And I was like, Craig, I just won $1,000. No, Ian, it's time to go.
We just
Because
talked
all
about
the
that
rest,
on a previous episode, that when you hit something like that, you start to play stupid money, and
yeah.
because you have the
Yep.
excess.
Mm,
And it's like, no, just enjoy that you just put a grand or so in your pocket.
yeah.
Enjoy that. Be satisfied, as Waylon
Yeah.
always says, right?
Yeah.
Be satisfied. It's a
Yeah.
great way of approaching it. Yeah. So that's probably the biggest pet peeve I have is just don't hate me for being loud. I mean, There's some people out there that were posting stuff. Who's that guy? Why is he shuffling his chips? I do it because I'm nervous, right? I'm nervous about, especially when I'm playing at a table that's all you guys, right? You got Leon has got his own channel, Brian's got his own channel, Joe, Craig. Jen was the only other person besides me that didn't have a channel. I mean, who else? I
Yep.
mean, everybody at that table had channels. And so, again, not that you guys try to do this, but I was kind of feeling inferior of I don't have a channel. Who am I to what am I doing at this table? But I have just as right to that table as anybody else does. I'm doing my bit to get part of that reserve table, but don't I mean, Jen does it in a nice way. She'll tell me, hey, you're kind of bugging, right? That's fine. But don't yell at me and say, hey, asshole, why are you shoving your chips? It's like, hey, sorry. You know what I mean? So, I
For
mean, that's
anybody that has
probably,
a
Yeah.
problem with Ian at the table, we at Full of Chips want to give you the fuck you. All right.
yeah. And I mean, come play with me for a while, right? Craig, you know, Chris, you get it. Come play with me for a while. We'll have a good time. We might not win
Yep.
a lot of money, but
Every time.
we're
We'll
at
have a
least
damn
gonna
good
have
time.
we're gonna have a good time, especially when we get, you know, I love to bring new people in, and I'm one of those guys that talks to people when they come in and is like, hey, how do you play this game, right? There's a lot of people in our communities like, get away from me, right? But for me, it's like, hey, come on in. Just don't talk to me when I roll, because especially if Jen's at the table. Yeah, quit talking to people. Well, that's how I calm down. That's how Bo talks about being centered. Ed does too, right? About being centered in the moment when you're throwing, right? Have the vision. Well, my vision is, hey, Chris, did you see that? I told you I was going to throw that double deuce, and I hit that double deuce.
Yep.
I told you to bet it. You didn't bet it. And Jen's like, shut up. Focus. You
She's
know?
just mad because she didn't bet it either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
That's what
But
it is.
that's probably my biggest pet peeve. It's just don't hate the people at the table that are here to have a good time. Now, if you got a sloppy drunk that's being a dick and just throwing chips past the dealers, and the boxman doesn't have the stones to be able to tell him to mellow out, that's another pet peeve. But that, everybody's told you guys that, on your stuff, right? I'm just telling you stuff. Embrace the people that are new every once in a while. Try to help them out, because we want to keep the game going. We don't want it to go to all electric, right, guys?
No. You're
We
right.
don't
Yeah.
want
You
and
definitely don't.
if there's not people playing on the tables, if they're not packed, they're going to do the individual ones, right? You know what I mean? So,
You know it.
yeah, yeah. So,
Craig, is it time for our favorite segment, the top five? All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for one of our favorite segments, the top five list. Craig, what is our top five list of today?
So the top 5 list today is reasons private tables are hard to fucking play.
Yeah, they are. They're not easy. And our guest Ian is going to do our top five with us. So, Ian, as our guest, you get to go first on the first one. What is number five? What is the fifth reason on your list why private tables are hard to play?
for me, first most, it's knowing styles. Like when we have our private tables up here, it's understanding that I might get 14 people that say, hey, they want to come to the private table, but some of them might play it a lesser amount and really there because they just want to play the ATS. You know what I mean? They might play, $18, 6 and 8 and put 10, 10, 10 up on the ATS, hoping that somebody hits it. So just knowing what people's styles are and how they can affect a table, right?
I like it. I like it. Craig, number five.
For me, I'm going to tail off a little bit of what Ian alluded to earlier in our conversation and interview, just about the private table we were on at Craps for the Cure. I know we got a lot of criticism from folks about, it wasn't about the dealers as much as it was about people not being able to make their bets. I'm here to tell you a private table should not have beginning dealers ever on the private table. You get the private table because you want that secluded area where you want the best from everybody. And quite frankly, I would expect you want the best from the dealers. It wasn't until our second night that we actually had a dealer who had dealt on Royal Caribbean, I think, Ian, for
Yeah.
15 years, and
Yeah.
she was amazing.
It was amazing.
I was telling Chris, she's the kind that like when she returns your winnings, she like does that little circle with her finger right at the end. Like it's just crisp, sharp. But the first night, it was it was like Jack Benny on the table of dealers.
Yeah,
Just it
we
was a
I mean,
fumbling here.
if you're gonna put us on a private table, know what the payouts are, especially when
Right.
we're only playing a $10 table. Know the
Yeah.
payout.
Yep. All right, number 5 for me is it can be a good thing, can be a bad thing, but I usually view it as a bad thing. You have nowhere to go when you're on a private table. Because typically speaking, you're supposed to be playing said private table. So if it's not going well, or you don't like it, you really can't leave. Theoretically, you can leave if you want, but you're supposed to be playing the table, so you don't have much of a place to go. All right, Ian, number 4 on the list.
You know, one of the things that's tough about playing a private table is giving other people an opportunity to play certain spots. Prime example, I walked into stick left 1. Our whole side of the table was as cold as ice, wasn't it, Craig?
Yeah.
On and Jen and Mac's side, that's where we were winning the money. But knowing it is just being able to say to somebody, hey, like Joe wanted to throw from a certain spot. And I asked him, I said, Joe, can I move for you? Can I give you an opportunity to shoot from stick left 1 versus stick left 2 or 3? I think he was at 3, wasn't he? And his first
Yeah.
roll was a PSO, and he got so stressed out about it. But you've got to have the ability to taste somebody, hey, can we step back? Ask the dealer, is that cool? Right? Because some tables won't let you do that. But like here at our local, if we say, hey, can he, he's throwing stick right 2, but he really wants to throw from stick left, can he move for that roll and then move back? They'll say, yeah. But ask that kind of question because I don't want to go to a private table and get stuck down in the hook like where Brian was, knowing that I never throw from there.
Yeah.
And people, not only that, but when they're videotaping me and I've got 10,000 people on my channel and they're watching me throw crap, that's, shrinkage. Let's be
Yeah.
honest.
Yep.
George Costanza, you know what I mean? So there you go.
Craig, number 4.
Speaking of George Costanza, as always, Chris. So when I was thinking of this, I originally had no crowd energy because there was a lot of crowd energy, like Ian said, down on Jen's end and Mac's end. But Ian and I were trying to infuse some energy on our end, but it just wasn't there because, part of it was some people were trying to film and some people were just quiet people in general. So the energy seemed to be low. But I actually went with not being able to leave because it is hard to do that on a private table. When J Mac had that 35 roller, at the time it had doubled my buy-in and I wanted to leave. And if we were on any public table, I would have left because we all know what happened to me in April in Atlantic City. But it's that ability, like, I, you're here for a reason. It's a private table. They spent the time to get that for us all to play. I can't just leave. I mean, J Mac's role that was the first night, right?
Yeah.
Ian? That was
Yeah.
the first night, and that
No,
was before, and again,
it was the second
and,
night because the first night was my ATS. Second night
oh,
was
you're right,
my roller.
right. But the thing was, we didn't even get around the whole table in the allotted time that we were given for that session. So not being able to leave was big.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, we're gonna have overlap. I already know it because my number 4 overlaps with both of your number 5s, which is the crew. Now, it can be good, it can be bad, but the problematic part, and I'm not talking about the crew you guys had because I wasn't there, but just if you get a bad crew on a private table, you got to deal with it because they're not switching out the crew. So that's one problematic piece that I have with private tables is like you hope you get a good crew and you try to make the best of the crew, but if you get a bad crew or a slow crew or just a crew you don't like, well, tough shit because you can't get that changed.
Yeah.
All right, Ian, number 3.
My number 3 was like Craig's, being able to leave the table. I find myself feeling guilty if I leave the table. And it's having that ability to say, you know what? Whatever I'm trying's not working. I'm just going to ease back. Craig's really good at this, you guys. I wish you guys could play with Craig and be able to see that. Craig, but he wants to still stay part of the table because it's a private table, right? Hey, things aren't going well. I'm going to take a break, but I'm going to sit right here and I'm going to be with you guys, which I think is really cool, right? It's like Mac. That's the only time Mac threw that whole time, the whole weekend when he played with us, because he went and played with Ed and those guys at a different location than what we played at the second night, right? So for Mac, it was like a one-hit wonder and done. Hey, great. Kudos. Don't be mad at him for leaving, or not coming. But for me, I've got to know when it's time to, hey, Ian, either you're hitting it or you're not, But again, I like to ride it till it's dumped.
Yeah.
That's where
Right.
dumping comes from.
Go
Right
big.
word.
Yeah, that's it, because I'm dumping it.
Craig, number 3.
Now, I put this on here. I've not actually been privy to this much, but it's because most of the private tables that I've been on have been low. They've actually lowered the minimum bets. But I understand that some casinos for the private table do higher minimum bets, but also the large buy-in. It's very hard that, some private tables, you got to have a $2,500, $3,000 buy-in. That's the reason that they gave the go-ahead for the private table. And it's like, wow, okay. For low bankroll people like myself, that is quite a lot of money for a private table.
Yep. All right, Craig. This may be a first in FullofChips history. We may have the same top 5, just maybe in slightly different order. But my number 3 is identical to your number 3. And again, for the people at home, we don't talk about this ever
No, we
beforehand.
don't.
But my number 3 is table minimums, table conditions, and conditions to get on the table. So, like you said, right, a lot of tables you're not getting that $10 minimum. Most times you're playing at least a quarter. At least on the East Coast anyway, you're playing a lot of quarter tables if you're playing a private table. You may not have the most favorable conditions of the table. You don't get to pick. I know Ian was saying you get to pick when you go to Snoqualmie. We don't get to pick what table we want. They just give us one if we get one. And then the large buy-in is also problematic. Because I don't like putting that much money on the table. Not that I'm going to use all of it, but I just don't like buying in for that much because it can give me the urge to use it. But table minimums and the table conditions are number 3 for me, because also the other thing with that is if you like certain bonus bets, sometimes the private table they give you are limited on bonus bets or hot bets or other things, which the hot bets I don't really care about because they don't slow the game down as much. But if you're ready to play a fire bet table and they give you a table with an ATS or vice versa, it can screw with things. So table minimums, table conditions, and the conditions of the entire private table. Number 3. Ian, number 2.
Number 2 for me, short man disease. What do I mean by that? I might not be good as you or as good as you, but just be you, right? Don't worry about if you're blessed to play with Ed and Ed PSOs. Everybody PSOs.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. You can be the best roller in the entire world. You take it and move on. Don't get pissed. And, that's the reason why, coach says, hey, qualify at least one roll before you do it, right? Before you let your bets out there. You got to know who you're playing with, especially at a private table. Nobody's coming in there with an SSR of 4. You know what I mean? We all play enough
Yeah.
that we know what we're going to get. It just happens. So if something happens to you and you're having a bad night, don't have the small man's disease to say, I'm going to pass the dice. I can't pass the dice. The dice comes to me. I want to throw. I want to
Yeah.
throw down. I want to get up, and I want everybody to see that I practice. Well, if I go and Jen tells me, Ian, you PSO 2-roller, 4-roller, pass those dice to Craig because he's at a 16, 14, and a 12. Think about it.
Ian's not going to pass the dice.
I'm not.
Ian's not passing the dice. All right, Craig, number 2.
I'm going to say, the private table it's faster paced, less recovery, less time to regroup mentally. It's easier on a public table because you literally can take as much time as you need because you don't have that confined amount of time for that session. But private tables mostly are around a set number of hours. We were lucky enough at the one private table at Crash for the Cure that they extended us another hour. I think we played 3 hours instead of 2 that we were originally allotted. But when it's only 2 hours, you're trying to get around the table, and it's starting over. It's going to the next person. And it's just faster paced, and that screws me up a little bit.
Yep. Number 2 for me is pressure to shoot well. So I feel like a lot of people who are on private tables, they have that internal thing that they want to shoot well for the group. Especially, being somebody who has a table and shoots a lot on video and other stuff. Um, some people have a expectation of how we're supposed to shoot, and like Ian said, I can PSO with the best of them. So it's more of an internal thing. I mean, I know, like, I'm not worried about it, but sometimes you get some like, oh, really? You really gonna do that to me? And I'm like, hey, it happens, man. Like, I can't control it 100%. Like, I if I could, we would all be retired playing craps for the rest of our lives. So
Yeah.
all right, Ian, number 1, what's the number 1 reason why it's hard to play a private table?
Betting envy. You might have a guy that shows up with $2,000 and you might have 500, and you want to play like, Jen has a large bankroll. We all know that, right? I have a medium-sized bankroll, and at times I have envy because I don't want to, even though she doesn't always put it into play, right? And so to have that ability to know how bets going, like we had a situation where there was a guy that's had a channel out here that was playing with us that night, and he was making these crazy bets that was taking the dealers an hour to set. I mean, okay, maybe not an hour, literally 5 minutes
Felt like an
of
hour.
actual time, felt like an hour, to place all these bets that he would win $4 and get excited about.
It was
Right?
very fishy.
Yeah, very fishy. Yeah. So, but don't, because I see somebody bet, you hear Ed talking about, know your progressions, 35 to, drop here and be able to go through those progressions to get it up. Oh, I'd be at 280 right there. I'm not going to be at 280. I'm going to be collecting a little bit more than Ed might, because Ed knows what he's throwing when you're at a private table. So when you have that FOMO, don't take it personal that you see somebody else chip up $5,000 and you only chip up 500. Be happy that
Yep.
you're chipping up because you don't have either the knowledge or the bankroll to be able to do that, right? I stress about that because I know I could reach in and pull another 1,000 out of my pocket to be able to bet, but I don't want it, right? I don't need to do what Jen does or somebody else does. Craig, me, John, we're all in that same rut. I like buying in for 620. I love meds. Give me a stack of 3. Right? I love that. Green, red, white. 620, let's go, right? But now there's times when I'm at a private table, I feel like, well, I got to buy in for 1,500. Why? Because I can show everybody I can? Nobody cares. right? Nobody cares. So play within your means, you know.
Yep.
That's a huge part of it. Once you figure that out, then you'll go home a lot happier at the end of a round playing with your friends at a private table.
Craps is one of the biggest
Greg,
games
number
where
one.
nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
No, nobody cares what you're buying it for.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody. All right. My number one, of course, Chris, we got 4 out of 5. All right. We got 4 out of 5 because my number one is All Eyes on You. You know, I stand here and I toss and I toss and I practice my throw and I practice my throw. And publicly on public tables, Jeff's seen me hit ATS 3 times. Lou and some people and Clay have seen me hit a firebend. But I get on a fucking private table next to Ian, the Crash for the Cure, PSO, PSO, PSO. Like, I only get to go to Crash for the Cure once per year. And this is what I do after all that throwing and all that practice. All eyes on you because you want to be the great one. You want to be the one that did what Mac did and have a 35 roller. I mean, literally,
Yep.
Mac came in, had a 35 roller, up and left like a wind. Like, I mean, that's how you do it. That's how you throw down the gauntlet and just,
Well,
put it on the
Yep.
table.
it helps when you're 6'7" too, you know. And he's throwing from a spot that he's like, I never threw. You know, him and his that beautiful voice of his, and he said, I don't know where he throw from here, guys. Watching, so we're all on the other side of the table going, okay, small bets, small bets, small bets, and then he just heats it up, and then he's peace
Yep.
out, guys. I'm out.
He had so many inside numbers,
It was
and none of
crazy.
us took advantage of it.
Yeah,
It happens.
yeah.
All eyes on you, man.
All eyes on you. All right, number one for me is the biggest problem that I have with private tables, and it will always be the biggest problem I have with private tables, is I know everybody on that table, and I know they can all shoot. So I'm going to bet like they can shoot. And when it's going bad, it's going real bad. And when it's going good, I'm making a lot of money. But I know everybody can shoot because they've seen me shoot. I've seen them shoot. We all know we can shoot. And you're just waiting for that one person to catch that roll like Jeff did. And sometimes it doesn't happen. And you just have a bunch of meh rolls. But you know anybody can shoot. So sometimes you dig yourself a hole that you normally wouldn't do. You wouldn't sit out on somebody shooting because you don't want to miss out on their roll. So that's number one for me is you know everybody and you don't want to miss out on their role because they could be the one to catch lightning in a bottle. So makes it hard.
Chris, we do say in the intro, real stories from the casino floor. You don't get any more
Yeah.
real than what we've just shared,
You don't. You don't.
It's a
I think
tough top
this
5.
all we've good top 5, and I think we've all learned from our top 5. Kind of like our tip of the episode. Craig, what's our tip
Our
of the
tip of
episode?
the episode, learn from your mistakes. For me, 3 years in, I know so much more than I knew when I started. And the last piece, which is a lot of last piece for a lot of people, the last piece to learn is discipline. And it took a hard hit in the face of doubling a bankroll and still going home with nothing back in April for me to put my feet in and really start reading books about discipline, reading online articles about discipline, until you can't stand it because you're tired of losing. I think even Jeff Mack said it the other night in one of the shows. He said, he was tired of losing for so many years, and he really dug down the last 4, probably mostly because the YouTube. YouTube gives you so much more exposure to other players in the community. And he was like, he turned things around, and he said for the past, I don't know, 2-3 years now, he's been having winning sessions more often than losing sessions. So learn from your mistakes. What do you guys have to say about learning from your own mistakes?
I just think, mistakes are gonna happen. Don't shy away from them, but there's a reason why they've happened. And you have to be able to look at that and recognize it before it turns into another mistake. So when you see it, and you see that, hey, a guy just rolled 3 sevens in a row and you just burnt $45 on the ATS, be careful when you go out, or hedge it some other way, right? Understanding, and I think that's the problem with a lot of the newbie people, is that they don't understand on how to handle that adversity, right? And I think that's the biggest key, is just, you know, be careful, right? John talks about this all the time, and that's what I appreciate, the bridge thing, right? And he's hammered it home every morning on his. I mean, I take my kid to community, so I can't watch it live as much as I used to, but I still go back and watch it. But making sure you understand just all aspects of it too, right? Don't just think, I watched Chris's show and he showed me that, him and Greg did this really cool, spin off of this 410 split. I can do that every time. Well, yeah, sure. Let me know how it works out for
Yeah.
you. Let me know how it works out
Yeah.
for you. I love it.
No, it's true.
A lot of the YouTubers call it clickbait, right? Hey, this is the all-time winningest strategy. And I was like, geez, right? Just tell me what the strategy's name is. Let me watch it. Let me practice it in my house a few times. If I like it, I do. If I don't, I don't. Right?
Yeah.
But just because it's good at
Yep.
the house doesn't mean it's going to be good at the table, right? We know that for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, my final thought on it's if you don't learn from history, history repeats itself. Same thing with lessons. If you don't learn from your lessons, you're going to keep making them, and they're probably going to cost you money. Hopefully, I guess that's all it costs you. If it's not something else. So, just learn from your mistakes. Again, we're all going to make them. Better to learn quick from your mistakes than to continue to make them and learn much harder way. So yeah, just learn from those mistakes. Take each experience that you have, embrace it. Take the good, take the bad, and try to limit the bad in the future. Improve upon the good, and you'll be good. So, wow, what a good episode! Episode 15, Ian. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your stories, your knowledge, your wisdom with us. This was great. Honestly, it's probably one of my favorite episodes so far. I really enjoyed talking with you and again sharing the stories, going over everything that we did talk about. I think it was really really good. So Ian, as our guest, any final thoughts, final words?
Yeah, for everybody out there, embrace the community. Come up. If you see somebody, don't be afraid to come up and say hi. You know, if you want to try this game out, try it out on Bubble Cracks machine first and then figure out how to throw. Bet first, right? I was the thrower for the longest time. I wanted to be the thrower, but understand betting first. And you can find some really good opportunities out there on how to bet. There's different ways of playing this game, and that's the beautiful part about it. But you guys keep this podcast going. I love it. I love the short clips on the on the TikTok and the Instagram and stuff like that. It's nothing better than seeing your guys' face, I mean, but I appreciate the opportunity to sit and share with you guys. Enjoyed it for sure.
Absolutely. We all just want to take the opportunity to thank you for joining us on Full of Chips. And, we just want to thank you for being a great friend. Um, Again, when you meet these people in person, you just can't put a price on the camaraderie and the lifelong friendships that it's created. And thank you, Ian, for you're such a genuine person and you are so giving and love you, man.
Love you
Thank
too,
you.
guys. Appreciate
Yes,
it, bro.
we
Appreciate
love Ian, and we love the
Double
folks at
dude.
home. We love the folks at home as well. So we appreciate you guys listening. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, you can drop them in the comments, or you can send us an email at fullofchipspodcast@gmail.com. If you need to find us on any of the socials, they're down in the description below: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Find us there. But again, we hope you guys enjoyed episode 15 of the Full of Chips podcast with Double D, Double D, and OBC. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your morning, evening, night, whenever you're listening to this. And don't forget to always stay full of chips.